much as possible, follow the slides. Wat gaan die alles sê? Ja, van die? Ja, ja.
Mostly Afrikaans, some English, and then one or two courses in other languages. And then Baba is going to pray, and then I'll start.
Baba. Okay, dan moet ik het vertalen.
Ja.
Net voor die tijd, voor die iets.
Ja, voor die iets. Ze moet nog niet aan de aanzien. Maar my waksel is so basis.
Just adding a tab.
Thank you. So I'm just going to ask everyone to put your headsets on. I'm going to deactivate this microphone and I'm going to go over to the headset. Right, can I just check that everyone can hear me?
Hi, welcome to tonight's meeting and thank you very much for your attendance. We really appreciate you being here. And I would just like to confirm that this is a public meeting as part of the scoping phase for the proposed nuclear plant at Bantamsklip replacement. The purpose of tonight's meeting is really, it forms part of the scoping phase, so it's not a meeting where any decisions will be taken. And it is also not a referendum. It is a meeting where we want to listen to the diverse perspectives from everyone to take your issues into consideration. Another approach. I don't think
that one is not working.
Okay, so we're just switching one minute. So my name is Antoinette Petersen, and I will be facilitating the proceedings tonight. Just move this down. I would like to introduce our team. So from WSP side is the Independent Environmental Assessment Practitioner. I would like to introduce Ashley Strong and Ryan Hayes, head of Class Translation. And then the applicant is Eskom. And from Eskom side, I would like to introduce Edra Max. Edra, where are you? I don't see Edra. There she is. And then Sedeka Kapu. So just from my side, this is the alcohol-free and the liquid-free side. And this is just to ensure our safety. This public meeting is really a platform for constructive dialogue. I understand that people feel they have been through the nuclear one process. There has been a lot of changes. Circumstances have changed, the environment, social context have shifted. Therefore, we are going to ask that when we break away, explain how this setup works, changing But while we conduct the meeting, we ask that we remain respectful. And that there will be that we will avoid disruptive behavior. We may close the meeting if things become a little bit disruptive. And I would just like to give everyone assurance that every single comment, question, and concern will be captured. And we are recording this meeting digitally. This recording will be available and transcript will be available and will produce minutes. Over and above the minutes, we will also include all the comments received and comments and responses for Can I just see by a show of hands that everyone is in agreement with the meeting conduct? Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate that. So I just want to go through the structure of the meeting. So everyone has a headset and every person should hear the presentation in the language of choice, that is either English, Xhosa, or Afrikaans. If there's any problems, please raise your hand. What we will do is, so during the presentation we leave the headsets on, and after the presentation we will connect the headsets, then we'll go up to the microphones instead. In terms of the structure, Ashley will present the environmental impact assessment process and timeframes. Eskom will be presenting the project description, and Ashley will then present the information about the specialist studies that are being planned for the impact assessment phase, and also what the recommendations are based on scope. After that, we'll move into our discussion. So the purpose of tonight's meeting is really not the final opportunity for comment. I don't know if you have been informed yet, but you have just received approval from the Department of Fisheries, Forestry and the Environment to extend the comment period ended on the 5th of May, but it's been extended to the 25th of May. So you are welcome to still submit comments in writing or by WhatsApp or by contacting the Public Participation Office. We are right at the start of the process, so we will share information about the project, and our main goal tonight is to listen to the concerns. Because every question, concern, and issue raised tonight will influence the terms of reference of the specialist studies to be conducted, and it will also determine how the impacts are evaluated during impact assessment. So this is the first phase of the project. This will also be another phase, but it will be explained more actually. So our main purpose tonight is to listen. We may not be able to provide answers to everything. And then I would just like to point your attention to the QR code. You are welcome to scan it to register as an interested and affected party. That is to make sure that we receive information and updates about the project and opportunities from it. The WhatsApp number and email address is also available on your presentations. And for this, I'm going to hand over to Ashley for her section of the presentation. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me? And can you hear the translators? It's all good? Everybody's fine. Okay. Right. We are here today to listen to present to you the new EIA process for a nuclear facility. I'm sure you're all aware of the previous EIA process that was done for the Nuclear 1 process. The Nuclear 1 process was done over a period of quite some time and was eventually authorized by the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment in 2017, October of 2017. Subsequently, it went through some appeals. The appeals were dismissed and the EA upheld last year in July 2025. And that was for the approval of the Dana-Fontein site, the development of the Dana-Fontein site, which is next door to Coburg, just north of Cape Town. Coburg has been currently run and operated by Eskom successfully for 40 years. And this is now they're looking at a second site. So, well, it would be a third site. So they've got Coburg, Dana-Fontein would be the second, and then to look for a third site to put another facility. Okay. The reason to look at nuclear power is really underpinned by three different policies, governmental policies. The first one is the nuclear energy policy, which was published in 2008. And that looks at that nuclear energy should be used as part of South Africa's diversification in terms of their primary energy sources. The next one was the National Development Plan, which is for 2030, which also looks at the use of nuclear energy as part of the energy mix. The IRP, or the Integrated Resource Plan, which was published last year in 2025, also now has included the need to install generating capacity of nuclear facilities up to 5,200 megawatts by 2039. We are here tonight to look at the environmental impact assessment process for the new nuclear facility. That is the green block up there on the screen. We are then supporting and providing information into the water use license and coastal water discharge license that comes afterwards. These two would only be looked at and applied for once an EA is approved. What does run concurrently with us and what we do provide information into is the heritage permit process, which is with the South African Heritage Resources Association, and our heritage specialist is very involved in that. The nuclear installation site license is a completely separate process. It's run with the National Nuclear Regulator on the side, and it is a concurrent process but a completely standalone. Okay, so if you were involved in the previous Nuclear One process, you would have known that it was a very long process. Subsequent to that, the EIA regulations have changed. And the EIA regulations now include various different timeframes for the environmental impact assessment practitioners, such as ourselves, timeframes for the public for review, and also timeframes for the department themselves in terms of their decision-making timeframes. So the timeframes are tighter than the previous. We submitted the applications on the 31st of March this year. And as you've heard, the draft scoping report is currently out for public review, which has been extended to the 25th of May. We would then post that, finalise that report and submit it to the department for their approval of our plan of study, and then move into the EIA phase. So hopefully that will mean that we will need to bring draft EIA reports to you towards the end of the year. In terms of public participation, this is the reason why we're here this evening. We are trying to make this public participation and the gathering of comments as transparent and as open and as inclusive as we can. We've also announced the project in very number of different ways. We've used newspaper articles, we've used radio and Facebook adverts, site notices, pamphlets. We're using virtual and in-person platforms for meetings, making sure that if people aren't close to the site, they can join the virtual platforms. We're also using focus group meetings. We have tried to get the report out in a number of different formats, both hard copies in the libraries. We've got tablets in some places, particularly in St. Francis Bay. We have tablets at our offices in Cape Town and Midrand, also at Eskom's head office. We also have website and data-free website, which means you can download and download the documents for free and even view them on your cell phones. So we really are trying to make it as easy as possible for everybody. We would like to just note that we have to capture all the comments that we receive. We have to respond to all the comments that we receive. And everything is documented and submitted to the department for their consideration during their review period. Sorry, I'm just waiting for the translators. Right, okay, we don't want to run too far ahead. Okay, why are we doing a full EIA process? Well, we trigger listed activities listed in the listing notices that are included in the EIA regulations. So the listing notice 1, 2, and 3 trigger different types of processes. Listing notice 1 and 3 trigger a basic assessment, but anything that you trigger in listing notice 2 is a full EIA process. And as you can see, we trigger a number of different activities in the NEMA regulations of listing notice 2. So that's why we are doing the full scoping and EIA process. I'd now like to hand over to Sadika from Eskom to do a short presentation, just a description of what the technology is all about and how it works.
Thanks, Ashley. Good evening, everybody. I'll just take you through a brief overview of the major components of the nuclear facility and what that looks like, what will be on the site. The 4 slides. And I'll just take you through that. I'll normally start when we're looking at the nuclear reaction, looking at sustaining fission reaction, which is the splitting of uranium atom into neutron, which happens in the fuel. In that process, what we find is that the neutron splits the uranium atom and creates another neutron at the subatomic level and heat. The neutron is used to impact another uranium atom, and that is what we call the fission chain reaction, where we have a continuous supply of neutrons impacting on uranium atoms and creates a sustainable chain reaction. The heat that's generated is what we use to heat up water in the primary circuit and in the reactor vessel. So we have a reactor vessel where the nuclear fuel is housed that we use to generate heat, which boils the water. Sorry, it doesn't boil the water, it heats up the water, which is then pumped through a steam generator. What's important about the steam generator, there's 2 functions. So the first function is to cool the water coming from the reactor vessel and return that back to the reactor and keeps the reactor cool. The second function is a very important one because it creates steam that we use on the secondary side to drive the turbine. The turbine is connected to a generator which is spun, and that creates electricity which we then put through the transmission network, and we find it as electricity in our homes and in industry usage. Another part of that's important in this diagram is the fact that the steam is cooled off in the condenser, and we use seawater to cool off that circuit and brings that water back. So what's important from this slide are 3 main components. The part in purple, which is the primary circuit, and indicates the flow of radioactive water that's in touch with the reactor vessel and the fuel. And then there's the part in blue, which is the secondary island, as we call that. That is water that is then used to cool the turbine and spin the turbine. And it's not in contact with the purple water, I can put it that way. And the third circuit that's cooling from the seawater used to cool in the condenser is not in contact with neither the condenser nor the reactor. So the water is completely separated from, the seawater is completely separated from the reactor in that process. It's all controlled in the control room by the control room operators who are well trained to manage the chain reaction and manage the plant together for that. Okay. And on the next slide, what we're showing here is the typical components and what they physically look like on the block. The important that we started with is the nuclear island, which houses the reactor, the steam generator, and it's a large container building, it's about a meter thick, that holds the important nuclear components inside. It's very well designed, it's robust, and all the different systems are contained within that. Connected to the reactor is the power plant, the turbine and electricity generators are housed. Connected to that would be the transmission network, where the electricity is then taken from the plant to the outside through the high voltage lines that we What we also have is support infrastructure on site, and those are office buildings, maintenance workshops, chemistry laboratories, all the facilities that's needed to support the operation of the plant, and those are the main infrastructure that will be there. And then we also will have on this side cooling water systems and water systems and water reservoirs, because we will be using a lot of water to help manage the plant, and we will be desalinated water from sea to reactor. And the idea is, we understand this is a water constrained area, the country is water constrained, so we will be using desalinated water from the plant for the water uses of the plant, and therefore not be reliant on the municipal infrastructure for the plant's water requirements. There will also be a sea water intake and outlet structure. Important to note, there is, during construction, there will be some temporary works that they will be using to support the initial part of the construction. And the final intake structure will either be tunnels or seawater intake structure to support us during the operation of the plant. There will also be a waste facility where we will be storing low energy waste on site. This waste will be moved from site by road to the licensed facility, which is in Northern Cape, and it's called Balbert. And that's where the current radioactive waste that we have in Kubo, Balbert, from some of the mines in the country where our products are shipped to and disposed of in that facility, which is licensed to do precisely that. The packages that's used there are normally drums and concrete, either steel drums or concrete drums. It's measured, it's contained, it's recorded, and it meets the requirements of the national nuclear regulator in the disposal process that we have associated with. On this part, we have what we call a plant parameter envelope, and this really is what we're using in this process to define the criteria, the requirements for the plant to meet from an Eskom perspective. And I'll talk a little bit in the next slide around what are safety issues that we are looking for. But important to note that what we define here are global enveloping parameters and criteria that any potential vendor, like the site or space plant Eskom, needs to meet within these bounding criteria. It's an internationally accepted practice. We have not yet selected a specific vendor or a specific technology. We have specified requirements according to the policy for pressurized water reactors, and the envelope really gives you the range of criteria that any vendor who wants to supply us with the reactor will need to meet in order for us to consider that plant area. So we will be comparing our specific requirements with the plant parameter envelope, and it needs to meet these requirements on a generic basis to be considered further for the detailed evaluation when we get into that stage around this. And then just finally from my side, what's important for us is Eskom, for any siting of any nuclear plant to be used on site. I just highlighted 6 out of quite a few other requirements that we need to make sure is met by the plant. And we're looking at items like passive safety. What passive safety systems are is really removing the reliance on active components to do certain safety functions. Like in the absence of electricity, we still need some functions to be performed, or where limited human interaction is required, try and reduce that as much as possible. So here we rely on the forces of nature to do its work. We rely on gravity to make sure that certain items and fluid systems and water is delivered by gravity to certain parts of the plant. Or we rely on what we call natural circulation for temperatures to be managed in those instances. And those physical properties help with the passive safety of the plant in its operational phase. concept one is a simplified design. And really, we're not looking for overly complex designs. The more complexity there is, the more difficult it is to manage. And we're looking around the plants has evolved quite significantly over time for simplified designs to be implemented, and that's what we're looking for, to reduce our reliance on too many complex components that we have. If there's less equipment to manage, there's less to break. And then what's very important for us is the concept of defense intent. We don't rely on multiple layers of defense to achieve a certain function, to do something. For example, we have the nuclear fuel, which contains the uranium pellets. That's contained in the fuel rod. If the fuel rod should break, it's still within the primary system and in the reactor vessel itself, which is much thicker steel, much more resilient and robust steel. If that fails, we still have a bit of concrete on the outside to protect and contain the fuel and all the activity inside. So those are multiple layers of defense over and above just relying on one single function or performance. Coupled with that is also what we call redundancy. And redundancy is important because you'll be looking at different means of fulfilling the same function. For example, we all have different types of pumps. You have a motor-driven pump which provides electricity to provide the driving force. Or you can have compressed air to do that, or steam to drive the pump. So those are all three different means of doing the same function. Another way of looking at it as well that we also have is you have two pumps of exactly the same size. You only need one, but we want a redundant extra one to make sure if the one pump fails, there's always another one to do that. In some instances, we would have three of those pumps in place to provide us the redundancy that those functions are met and its criteria are appropriate. But also, very important for us is the latest plants needs to be robust against extreme weather conditions. And here we're looking at climate change, we're looking at severe winds, we're looking at earthquake scenarios, and making sure the plant meets these requirements appropriately in the design and the design variables that we're looking to achieve. And then finally is the concept of what we call a low damage, low damage frequency. And this is really a number that we use to rank plants and around the overall safety significance of the plant. It's measured in the order of millions of years, hundreds of millions of years of that event happening and the cumulative impact on the fuel core and what that means. The lower that number is, the better it is for us to manage. And that is one of the key design parameters that we are looking at when we're preparing different plants together. Thank you.
Done? Sleep this on my side. Okay. Everybody good? Proposed alternatives. In terms of EIA regulations, the EIA needs to consider alternatives. These alternatives need to be feasible, reasonable, and viable. So in the case of the scoping study, we have discussed and considered various types of alternatives, including site alternatives, replacement or unsplit. We've looked at energy generation alternatives in terms of different technologies, so coal, solar, wind, hydro, nuclear, and the pros and cons of those. We've looked at design alternatives, so looking at the footprint of the plant, cooling alternatives, water intake and discharge, spoil disposal, what else we got here, fresh water supply, brine disposal. And then the last one that's the most important, that is covered in a little bit of detail now, but will need to be discussed in a lot more detail in the next phase, is the no-go alternative, which also needs to be looked at. Just in terms of locality, Bantam Slip, if you didn't know, well, it's just down the coast from 30 beach to Transvaal in the Western Cape, and I think everybody here knows exactly where it is. Just next between Oyster Bay and St. Francis. So, yeah, those are just for orientation. And tonight, as you know, we are in Oyster Bay. In terms of the specialists that are involved in our EIA. We've got quite a number of them covering various different aspects of biophysical, physical, social, and heritage environments, even economics, land use, climate change, human health and safety. We've got a number of different specialists involved. They've done scoping reports to date to be able to assist us with the upfront assessment of the alternatives that we've looked at. And all of them will be also doing the detailed studies on the preferred site into the EIA phase. We've got some sensitivity maps this time round. This is something that wasn't required by the department in the previous EIA. Now they have what they call the DFFE screening tool, and we have to pull together a composite sensitivity map. There's a nice detailed description of this process in the scoping report in chapter 8 and 9. But this is the current sensitivity map, what it looks like at the moment. We've done one for buttons and for tasters. For example, these red areas are critical biodiversity areas. These are protected areas, heritage sites along the coast. You'll see similar colours on the taste map. Again, critical biodiversity areas, protected areas, heritage areas, and then lots of various different noise receptors or sensitive receptors, including here the oyster bays on the side and the capes and crosses on that side. So far they've looked at the potential issues, potential risks, potential impacts, potential recommended interim mitigation measures that they've identified. So these are not final impacts by any means. They can be added to, they can be taken away from if it's decided it's not an impact, if there can be new ones added in the EIA phase. But we'll be looking at all of those aspects that we have here. They still have to go in and have a detailed assessment and really interrogate all those impacts. And that's part of what we're doing here tonight, is getting some local knowledge in, see what else, maybe they've got a gap, maybe they've missed something, giving that over to the specialists, making sure they consider it in the next phase. In the next phase, they will be doing a detailed identification of mitigation measures, and there will also need to be an environmental management plan compiled in the next phase. What we ask the specialists to do at this stage of the process, the scoping phase, with what they know, looking at the baseline information, the information that they have in hand, the new site visits that they did, looking at updated information as well. We asked them to go into the impact assessments, which they did on both sites, and we asked them to identify from their perspective which site would be the preferred from a biodiversity point of view, a heritage point of view, a groundwater point of view, etc. We then pulled those together, and we have a sort of a little summary. We've got four specialists in Buttons completely. That was Buttons was the best site for them. We have two that also picked Buttons but that say Taspin would be suitable. 8 specialists picked Taspin and 11 were neutral in saying that it didn't matter on their side of things which one it was, the impacts were the same. We then looked at other issues about the two sites that would then make one sort of weigh them up against each other and see in terms of feasibility, reasonability and viability. Looking at these, we looked at again in our readiness, how ready is it from the NNR point of view, how ready is it from connecting to the grid in terms of grid infrastructure point of view, looking at the objectives going forward, and Buttons is definitely high on that, currently not being viable. There's no fatal flaws, but it is not currently viable, making Taspin at this stage the preferred site. This is not final. We recommended it in our report, but the department still needs to review the report and still needs to approve that. So the department could come back and say to us, yes, we agree with you, the recommendation, we're happy with your recommendation, please move forward into the detailed studies on placement. But they also could come back to us and say, we think we need to do both studies in sites in more detail in the next phase. So that decision will be up to the department once we know. So after this, it's important to know that from this public participation process, we collect all your comments, we have to respond to them. All of them will be captured in the comment and response report, submitted to the department in a final scoping report. They will then need to review that and either approve or reject our scoping report, or ask us to go to do some more work or whatever. But that they then have some time, and then everybody will be notified when the final scoping report is ready, and also what the decision by the department on the scoping report is. And once we know that, we're moving to the next phase. And then we'll very likely see you again at the end of the year. so yeah, and that, I think, from my side, just a reminder of how you can send your comments. Obviously, outside of this meeting, there's email address, QR code that you can scan and get the online form to fill it in, send your comments. So please do that. In the back of your presentations, there's also 2 other QR codes for the WSP and the data-free websites where you can download the reports and have them. Okay, and now I'm going to hand over to, where did you go? There we go. Tony. Okay, what we'd like to do is ask you to take your headsets off. We will just connect them. We'll move on to the other sound system and explain what we're going to do next.
Right, so our session tonight is going to work a little bit different. We would like to give everyone a voice. Therefore, I'm going to ask that the people who are not currently sitting at the table, that you please join a table where there are chairs. We still have chairs here in front, and there's several tables open. I'm going to give 15 minutes to 20 minutes time, and I would like every table to appoint in your groups a spokesperson and someone who can write, and then the role of the spokesperson is just to make sure everyone at the table gets a chance to voice their concerns or their questions or their issues. We write it then, the person that's the writer or the scribe will write the questions, and then the spokesperson will come and share the table's questions and concerns with the rest of the group, and we will respond to those questions. Ek gaan dit net in Afrikaans herhaal en ek soek vir Tengu. Tengu, where are you? So that you can just repeat it in Xhosa as well. You can ask your questions you can write your questions in your language of choice. In English, Afrikaans, or Xhosa, we will translate. So wat ons vra is dat elke groepie 'n persoon aanstel wat 'n spreekpersoon is vir die groep. Die spreekpersoon se werk is om seker te maak elkeen in die groep kry kans om vrae te lys. Die skrywer skryf die vrae neer en dan gaan ons vra dat die spreker die groepie se vrae vir ons net voorkom deel met die res en ons sal dan die antwoorde gee. Thank you, can you please come and translate that to Xhosa? Thank you, sir. Okay, to you now, sir. So our team will also be available to assist. Can I just ask you to me to take the mic to that gentleman, please?
Thank you. I just think there's so many diverse groups and people sitting at one table. I mean, I'm from the squid industry and I've got a whole host of questions. Are you going to be restricting me or myself? Sort of, I don't know how it's going to work. I don't know these gentlemen, what industries they're in. I'm in the squid industry. I've got a lot of questions. And important questions that need to be minuted, and I feel that this way you're proposing is just not going to do the industry justice. Yeah.
Right. So I hear you and I hear your concern. So how this session normally works, and I've done it with other groups as well, it's really designed to give every single person an opportunity to voice their issues. Up to now, some of the meetings have been extremely disruptive, and it's been very difficult to give people a fair and equitable opportunity to participate. And by using this method, we would like to give everyone a voice. So the plan is 15 minutes for the group discussions, feedback, and then we will take the questions that you have with with regards to the squid industry as well. You're welcome to, you can choose if you want to put them on there, but we will have an opportunity for you to pose your questions. Okay, so I think we are going to start with the 15 minutes now, and then we will circulate and we will do feedback after 15 minutes.
left with 5 minutes to go before we reopen discussions.
further left to come and ask their questions. Can I ask that we keep the room quiet? Sorry? No, just the presenters. I meant, yeah,
Do you want them to
there we go.
at the table?
I want to sit at the table. Okay. So, could I ask everyone to just, if you're welcome to sit at your table and present your questions, but we would like to take your questions and take photos of it so that it can form part of our report. Ons sal graag julle vrae wil afneem of ten minste net wil hê sodat ons dit in die verslag kan inwerk. Alright, please go. Just say your name and your surname, please.
My naam is Tinus Vermaak. My eerste vraag is, when will NTCSA launch its sector transmission EIA, and when will we know who the EIP for that will be? Second one is more clarity with exactly which study area boundaries apply to which specialist. If you can maybe find out more about that. And then to confirm whether the 80-kilometer study boundary includes Utenake and surrounding architectural land. And then the FPA from COFA asked if I can ask you to send them more details about registering to be an effective party. They are not aware of this meeting. And then the last thing is KI tablets or within the 5-kilometer immediate notification zone. If there's any plan around that. And then the time frames, if you can maybe let us know about the time frames. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask Ashley to just take the response. Thank you.
Tumelo will also take photos of all the different questions. In terms of study area boundaries, I just want to pull up a map. Just hold one moment. I think this will give us some good indications. The study area boundaries, it does depend on the specialist study, for example. So the brown dotted area here is what we call the EIA corridor, and that is within that area is the planned footprint as well as all the temporary laydown and temporary footprint areas that would be affected. That would be studied together with the access road possibilities as well as this funny like block that goes up this way and this square here, which is the proposed main transmission substation. So that whole area would be studied by footprint-specific studies like fauna, flora, heritage, which affect where you would be digging. In terms of the other studies like social, obviously that study area is much bigger because it would look at surrounding areas, it would look at, that is a very wide study area. It encompasses municipalities, etc., etc. The traffic study would obviously look all the way through to Kuka, PE, the roads, how they would get large infrastructure in. So it really is dependent on the specialist study. Okay, I hope that assists. Then, in terms of giving how to register, please give them a copy of the QR code and then they'll be able to do that. The NTCSA, in terms of that transmission line, I don't know, Deirdre, if you can maybe give some more info. I know that they're not ready yet.
Thanks, Ashley. Good evening, everybody. So, with the NTCSA, we have to follow the same process that everybody else does. First, we'll ask them what the transmission lines for bottom slip and replacement would, where they would need to come from and how they would look, and a a quotation on those, and then we eventually would have to, once we've engaged them and we understand the processes, we would then need to ask them to initiate it and put down the money for it. So we haven't put down the money yet, we've only got the initial information from them. So I don't have a date of when we would go ahead with that. We'll try and get a date and put it into the answers and response report, but I don't have an exact date at this stage. Okay.
Have I missed anything?
It's quite a few. We have got functionalized description of the
Oh, okay. I don't think so, no, not yet.
Do you know how many lines a nuclear plant like this, how many lines
Would be required.
will be required?
I think, do we have, I don't know if we have that number yet.
No, we haven't yet, because the National Transmission Company will still do that EIA and do that determination. It will either be 400 kV line coming out or 765 kV line coming out. And those are different spec lines that will come through. It'll probably be the 3 or 4 lines coming out from the plant.
Did I get everything? Oh, I think this now is for 5 kilometer. I think we will take note of that last question of yours and respond to it in the, get some more detail for you. Okay.
So the potassium iodide tablets, you're asking how that would be distributed. In terms of the emergency plan provision, those would normally be handed out by the disaster management center body that would be, it still needs to be established for this area, but for Kuwait it would be resting with the police services that will distribute that to the affected communities if the call is made that those tablets be issued beyond the 5 kilometer radius. So they would be dealt with and managed and issued by the police or the relevant rescue service. The reason for that is the tablets do expire, so we don't want them to be in people's households or anything to the effect, because when they expire they need to be pulled back and controlled and reissued. So the controls around that is important, that the proper tablet is available for disbursement by the relevant authority when the call is made.
There's just a few more questions from the table. They've asked me just to repeat this. In terms of waste trucks, how big will the trucks be? How often will they be on the road? And how many trucks will be transporting waste?
In terms of the radioactive waste from the facility, okay. So the waste at this stage would be going, so low and medium level waste would go to pulp pits. That's in the Northern Cape. It would be going by road, and if I remember correctly, that's road transport in specially designed containers. So I think there's metal containers and concrete containers. They all drop tested and specifically designed to transport the material. It's the same material, the same containers that they use to transport the material from Kubu currently, Pelindaba, your medical facilities across the country, and all your gold mines. So they all use similar means of transport and way to transport. And the actual containers are drop tested and all sorts of different things. And on a low bed truck, and normally police escorted as well. At this stage, I don't think we can say how many trucks would be going, but if I can just to give you an idea, we have just a picture here. This is Fall Pit. The active cells are the little block in the middle. This little area, that area is been receiving waste
from all those facilities, the gold mines, the medical facilities, Kuberg, for the last 40 years, and they haven't yet filled that little section. So I don't know if you have any ideas what number of trucks and how often. Not as yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think what is important as well is there are specialists in the EIA phase that will be assessing exactly the transportation and the hazardous waste and radioactive waste management and transportation. So the detail on that will be provided for in the next phase of the project. So obviously that will be in the EIA phase.
Thank you. And then just the next question is, what is the footprint?
No, the question was the type of transport vehicle. It will be a low big truck with the load that is secured on that. There's a limit on the number of containers you do put on the truck. So with the concrete canisters, there's about 7 that goes on the load bed, and that gets issued, and there's a little bit more on the metal drums, which is 210 litre oil drum, put it that way. They all get tied and secured appropriately to the truck. This truck is properly inspected before it leaves the site to make sure everything is secure before it does leave the site.
Thank you. And then just questions related to the footprint. What is the footprint of the actual buildings of the facility, and where is the entrance to the site?
I can't comment on the footprint as yet because we have specified enveloping criteria in the environmental for the EIA process. The footprint would depend on the specific technology because each design has a different size footprint of what the reactor building looks and feels like, how the turbine building is assessed, and then based on the specific design and where we place the 2 or 3 reactors next to each other, the footprint would change. But it needs to fit into the designated space to go in there, and the entrance would probably be from both the east and the west side of the site.
Just in terms of both, there's an entrance on the east and on the west. East, so I think it's this side, Oyster Bay side. No, that's west. East side is this road here. West side is this side. I think it's there near west. So it would be near here.
Through Oyster Bay.
Don't think it's through Oyster Bay. I can't remember now exactly where the access road goes, but it comes in, but not through the middle of town, as far as I can remember.
Just before Oyster Bay.
It's just before it comes down again. But in terms of the footprints, just so that I can just say, the EIA is looking at 150 hectares of footprint. That is not that is everything including temporary laydown areas that we're looking at, and those would then be rehabilitated post. So the actual footprint of the facility is much smaller than that.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask that if the question has already been asked, that you each table just repeat the questions that have not been asked yet. So can I check with the table right at the back if you are ready to go with your questions? Yeah. Right at the back.
Yeah. So they can start the table.
Thank you. Let's give them a chance.
We are still in support of the project. Plant as we did from 2008 until today, we are still there. There are issues or questions One is to say to you as the EIA specters or company and Eskom to do a second round from this community of Oha going to Quebec site for a visit again. As you are saying, things are changing every year. We see that we need days again to go and visit Quebec. I think Quebec is 40 years now. We went there on 2010 doing inspection for 4 days. And some of us were anti-nuclear. But when we were on the site, some of us were saying, no, what is here in front of us is not what we were told. So I'm trying to say we need a second round to go to Quebec. You must fund that man. Because Eskom is scared to fund anything. Go and need a a second one is the door-to-door. We think it's a need, as you are aspect of the EIA, to go door-to-door. Because our people are tired of these meetings from 2018 until today. And government cannot answer on this. It's more than 15 years now. It means government has changed for 3 times. Not having an answer on this. We are going to pension. We thought that we are going to get pension there. Until today, we are not getting anything from there. One thing that is happening, everyone who's having a computer in front of him is just sending to Parliament that the EIA must be done again and again and again. I think the 50 years to come again, the station is not going to be. We are saying go for door-to-door in our community. Just to clarify if our people are still there, because they are tired of these meetings. And this thing of the nuclear plant is triggering on the economy of Oyster and St. Francis Bay, because people are selling their houses. When it comes to this thing of Eskom, when is it the high hopes on Parliament and everyone is there? People are selling their houses, they are moving, their farmers, they are selling to go to other places. So this, I think it's the last year now that we are doing the EIA Eskom before the violence on physically. Or the last one is the issue of the jobs creation. People are saying they see on these wind farms that they started the wind farms in 2013, but today there are some of the community members who are doing the work, the technical work that has been done by those people who are coming from Italy and Germany. So even on this nuclear plant, we are not scared of reconstruction phase and wait for 5 years for our youngsters to go to school for this new energy. Just to have a job inside of we must not be told that people from outside are going to come and to take our jobs. It is not like that. We know we are here more than 20 years now. And wind farms we are taking them over as a community. Our children are there, working there, technicians. We are not tired of this one, okay? It must come. We will deal with it when it's here. I think we're finished with the title. Let's talk about number 11. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, a request for a site visit to Kuba. I think we note that. Eskom, I'm not sure if you want to respond to that. And then there's a request that the EIA team goes door to door in the communities. People want answers. They want to know why this EIA is being done repeatedly. And there is quite a big stakeholder fatigue, means as move. And then regarding job creation, what assurance will locals have that they will be upskilled and employed? And I said they are also supporting the project.
Okay, so I'll get, in terms of stakeholder fatigue, we can completely accept that. It's been a long time. People have been back, different people, different consultants, new process. Unfortunately, because it is a new EIA, we need to come back and relook. We need to relook at the studies, make sure that we've reviewed and we update everything and look at everything afresh. So we will try and do our best to make sure that we engage as much as we need to, make sure that you have every opportunity, but to at least take, I know there's a lot of frustration, so we do acknowledge that. And in terms of job creation, this is definitely something that the social impact assessment will look at. I don't know, Deirdre, if you want to give a little bit of background in what would happen in terms of how they would look for people when the time comes closer.
Yeah, thanks Ashley. So in the Eskom processes where we have large infrastructure projects, such as the coal-fired plants that we build, Majupi and Kusili, there is a process to ensure that we can first of all upfront upskill local people, that we can help people to develop businesses. So in the Majupi case, one of the projects that we always talk about is a laundry facility that was started by one of the locals and was very successful. But there's obviously lots of jobs outside of the power station as well as inside the power station. And locals in a vicinity are definitely given preference for job opportunities, but is not limited to the locals.
One of the residents in Oyster Bay. Our questions, I know this is an early stage and there's lots of things still to happen, but let's give it a try. How many people is an estimate that will be here during the construction phase and the operational phase? Then, what will be the limitations in terms of building and construction that will be placed upon Oyster Bay, residential and otherwise, because of its proximity? And the last question, one is having insurance for your personal, medical and your buildings. What has been seen like at Kuberg, what effect does that have on people and their premiums that they pay for insurance? Exclusions that might be applicable to you.
Okay, so at the moment the construction figures are approximated at about 10,000 people, but it's not all at once. We still need to look at what activities would start when and how that 10,000 would be distributed over the whole construction phase, because it wouldn't be 10,000 people for the whole time. It would sort of come up, get bigger, and then go down again. Operation, I'm not sure. Deirdre, you know, Sadika would know the operation figures. And then I think where will they be? So I think I'm going to ask Sadika to answer that as well. And then just in terms of the insurance question, which is a very valid question, it actually was brought up in our meeting this afternoon as well. And it's something that we have taken down, and it's something that definitely the social and the economic specialists are going to have a look at. And I think Sadika has also got a little bit of insurance response that you can give for that as well.
So for Kubek itself, we have a 1,500 permanent staff, and we probably have another 1,000 contract staff that supports us with normal maintenance and those type of activities. So you're looking around 2,000 to 2,500 people that will be permanently working on the power station. For those staff, the market will dictate where they would be living. Some of them, I imagine, would stay would want to relocate to Oyster Bay, some to St. Francis, others to Jeffries. I can't say where they will end up purchasing property to reside in as Eskom employees. We do have a good home ownership scheme, so a lot of them will buy into the property market for themselves and relocate their families to an appropriate place for that. Can you hear me at the back? I just need to confirm that. Thank you. On that, in terms of a construction staff that were coming in, we know there are lots of people coming in there. We had in our plans, and we are re-evaluating an appropriate construction village to temporarily house that staff. Our current designation has been human staff, those were plans, and we are revising those around where the best place would be for Eskom to accommodate staff for the project in the area, taking into account the local demographics to support that initiative for us. So we are looking at that, and we will make an appropriate selection of a site and an EI process for that specific project around that. My previous boss was here, our intention was never to buy any Eskom housing, but we will need to look around the Eskom home ownership scheme on how we facilitate that at more good. Insurance. Yeah. The question was asked around insurance from a lot of the staff that's staying around Kubek, and it's really within 500 meters from the facility is the Danafontein site. And I'm not aware of any limitations on the insurance. The comment was made in case of a nuclear incident that they would not be covered. Eskom and any nuclear facility in the country are regulated by the National Nuclear Regulator to take out nuclear liability insurance, which is what would compensate the individuals from loss due to the nuclear event if that should happen on site. So that would be covered by that liability insurance, which Eskom is obliged to take out by the nuclear regulator, and Eskom has to do that. Thank you.
Follow-up question.
You're referring to the question whether our medical aid schemes and insurance will go up because we're so close to the
So the question.
Are we directly affected? Not if anything happens, it's on a daily
Yeah.
basis.
So the concern raised here is that people's personal medical aid
premiums will go up, and there's concern that will not be covered if there is a nuclear facility in the area.
And I think that's a very valid concern. So we are going to give that over to our specialists so that they can do some more digging and see what is currently the case on the Kuburg side, and if that is actually a thing, so that we can take that into account in terms of the impacts on the economic and the social side.
Are there people staying within a 7-kilometer radius?
Yes.
So then you can.
Yes. Yeah. So I think Malkos is literally a kilometer down the road.
Evening. I'm not going to stand up. Obviously, I've got a lot of questions already, but I will stick just purely to our concerns in the squid industry, and the other questions just via email. This is going to be one of the biggest building sites in the southern hemisphere. So that's the size of this project. So I don't think we need to understate that this is just a little small construction that's taking place. It's huge. Our main concern in the squid industry, which has been going now for 40 years. I don't live in Oyster Bay, I live in St. Francis Bay, but my boats all fish along here. You can see the lights, the residents here. A lot of residents from Oyster Bay fish started this industry, but the young Steinbergs and Rudolf Gerber. So there's a lot of history of the squid industry that's based here. One of our main fishing areas is the stretch between Mostert and Oyster Bay. That we probably catch 30-40% of our squid. At the moment, these are our main concerns, and they're just very general ones, and I don't think they can be mitigated. And so because of that, we strongly oppose this nuclear bill. Just a few of our concerns. The building spoil that's going to be developed is going to be developed or as a result of the bill is 10 million cubic meters of spoil, and that's a huge concern to us. The main concern about that is that 10 million cubes is going to be pumped out to sea. And that is equivalent to 400,000 truckloads of building spoil is going to be dumped out at sea. And 400,000 truckloads, and those are the big articulated trucks. They are going to be, if you put them bumper to bumper, that amount of trucks will stretch for 8,000 kilometers. That's a lot of trucks. We won't see it. You won't see it because it's all going to be dumped at sea. And the problem is that is going to cause severity of events. Every time the wind blows, every time there's a bit of swell, you can kiss goodbye to your clean, beautiful water that you get off Oyster Bay, St. Francis Bay, or whatever. That sand that has been dumped there is not going to just stay there. With the currents, it's going to spread thinly from Oyster Bay right through probably to Jeffreys Bay. That's how much sand it is. The problem with that is that sand that has been dumped is dissimilar to the sand that is on the bottom of the ocean at the moment. So everything will be covered by this layer of sand, and it will become like a desert. It's going to kill every little bit of flora and fauna. So that, as a squid industry, is our main problem. We're not just looking at the taste by area not being able to be fished anymore. We're talking about this whole stretch of coast, probably right down to Jeffreys Bay. That is our main concern. Obviously, the other concerns, the smaller concerns, is the warming of the water. I think you'll all do the studies, and that could be a problem. And also, there is a salination plant, and that's going to discharge brine into the ocean or taste pit. Now the brine doesn't just mix with the salt water, it's heavier than the salt water, and it sits on the bottom. So that in itself is a problem. Over and above the building spoil, we have those other three problems: the warming and the brine discharge. Now I saw in one of your pictures, I think it's on your pamphlet, you talked about a copper dam. Is that on the cards for Taste By?
As a temporary copper dam, the beginning of the project. Sorry. Yeah,
so temporary copper dam is one of the options at the beginning of the construction phase, or at the beginning of operation.
Because I believe, I'm not sure whether I'm getting this EIA sorted, mixed up with the last, or this scoping report with the EIA, but there was going to be a trench dug under the sea surface, and there would be a discharge pipe and an intake pipe. We don't know, I don't know what the extent of the diameter of that pipe is, and how far out to sea is this, the discharge pipe of the warm water, but in the construction phase, the discharge, how far out to sea are we going to discharge this waste material? What distance from the shore? How far out to sea? Another obvious problem and concern to the squid industry is the socio-economic impact. We have 2,400 direct fishermen on the boats out there. All of them have fished along this stretch of coast. That works out to about 500 million rands of wages per annum. So there's a huge socio-economic effect if this area becomes a no-go fishing zone for our squid industry. Another problem we had with the past marine ecology reports is that they were all desktop studies. I don't think there was one person that put on a scuba gear and actually went down and saw what the bottom strata looks like. They were all desktop studies, and we objected then, and we respect, and we object to them now. Another question I have is, clearly there's going to be restricted fishing areas. Do we know how far out to sea and the extent of the restriction? How far out to sea and also along the length of the coast? Is it going to stretch into Oyster Bay, into Cape St. Francis? How far will it actually extend? And whether this has been worked out yet by the powers that be. We've got a whole host of other concerns, but those are our main concerns. The rest, I'm hoping we have a key focus group meeting and we can put all our concerns down via email and then discuss it at a meeting. I have left my name, contact details and email on this piece of paper. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm just going to ask our responders to respond. I know Ward 1 wants to go next. I see you. I see the other people's hands. I'm going to ask you finally to just be patient. We will get to you as we work through these questions. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm struggling. Can you all hear me?
No, you can't. To me, there you go. To me was going to sit. Very valid questions, and I think very also for the scoping process. At this stage, there's a lot of studies, detailed assessments that still need to be done. I think what is important, firstly, is, and we had a chat a bit earlier, the suggestion on a focus group meeting. We'll definitely organise a focus group meeting specifically with the squid industry, where these concerns can be raised in a sort of a more sort of a focused environment. What I would like to say in addition to that as well is when, for instance, and I'm just going to use the spoils example now as not address each of the rest, is there are various options that are being considered in respect to spoils disposal, spoils management and disposal. There's obviously reuse options that are being looked at. There's also on-land disposal options that are being looked at. Obviously there are concerns regarding the very fines material and the requirements for having to sift it. And then there is also deep offshore disposal options that are also being looked at. However, that doesn't mean that at this stage there's been a selection in terms of we're going to do this. So by looking at the various options at the ERA phase, the specialists, the marine specialists as well as the ocean specialists will be assessing what are the best options. It's not just a desktop. Obviously, it's also assisted by various existing information that's available. It's additional modelling that will be done based on the volumes that we've raised, looking at the various depths of disposal. Same with the intake and the outflow structures similarly. Within the plant parameter envelope, there are already at this stage, there are certain limits defined in terms of length, distances offshore, but then also in terms of mechanisms like effective diffusing, for instance, the thermal heat within the area. So there's various options that they're looking at to ultimately get to the situation where they get to the lowest impact and to assess whether that impact has got consequence. So we can't answer the extent of those questions, right? That will be done in the EIFA. Similarly, the social and the socio-economic effects are also noted, and it is one of the key aspects that we have also. This is a common theme that we pick up, not just in your industry, but I think there's quite a few other industries similarly. So it is a strong focus aspect. Again, we've got a social specialist as well as economic specialists that will be looking at that as well. And then again, this is a transparent process. So what is being recorded at this point in time, it's minuted. You'll have it will be displayed within the comment and response report as well as our response in that going forward into the EIA phase, and ultimately that has to be addressed in the EIA report in terms of what is that final extent of significance. So that's a short answer to, I know a lot of issues. I can't give you the answers to them now. And I also want to state at this point in time, remember we're in scoping phase, so, and I think the gentleman mentioned earlier in the group that he realizes we don't at this stage yet have all the information. We don't. We're still gathering information. We're also making sure that we get a comprehensive understanding of what the issues are. and that will be the further detailed assessed.
Can I just check that we've noted the request for a focus group meeting with industry, and we'll be in touch with you regarding that. People, it's 8 o'clock. Can I just get your permission for us to continue for a bit longer? Thank you. So I'm just going to give that table over there a chance, and then this table wants to go next. Please, can I just ask that you don't repeat the questions that have already come up? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chairperson. We don't have questions. I mean, I think the questions that have been asked, and those that we have highlighted, they have been attended to. But the reason why I raised my hand, just after the gentleman, there was a question that we were dealing with here, the issue of the experience that Eskom has on Quebec and Dana Fontaine, which are the plants that are currently operating. Now there is a myth that, I'm saying it's a myth because when you say that the highlighted problems that has been raised by the gentleman cannot be mitigated, it's not true. But I would like Eskom to clarify, because those questions are very valid, what he has raised, and everybody is talking about that. But I know that you've got Quebec that is 40 years old, which had similar problems before you guys went there. But now we've got that Quebec that is operating. You may share to us the experience that you have in a particular fish that was there. What happened to it in terms of what he has raised? But what I wanted to say is that I would like us to scare other people by saying that there are problems that cannot be mitigated. So I want to put it on the record that any problems can be mitigated. But I would like to ask Eskom to educate more on the experience that they have in these two power plants, because definitely in this area this nuclear power station is needed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I just want to mention that we do respect every view that is voiced here tonight, and that the EIA, as an environmental assessment practitioner, WSP cannot take sides. We are obliged by law to record every single comment, whether the comments are positive or negative or opposed or in support of. So while we cannot enter into a debate about that tonight, we do take note of all comments and concerns. Eskom, are you able to respond on the fish and the experience at Quebec?
So we have had many studies done on marine, but we don't have chopper at Quebec. What we have established is directly in the area where there is no access allowed. I think we have the biggest crayfish, but most likely because they are not allowed to be fished because it's a reserve. So we've seen no negative impacts. But just remember, we don't have the same situation as we have with the chopper and we need to make sure that we don't have a negative impact on the chopper fishing industry. At Quebec we have not found any negative impacts on the fishing or fish or marine life in that area. After 40 years of research, analysis, monitoring,
Do you want to add something, Sudeka?
we have had events where we needed to curtail operations, like jellyfish ingress into the intake basin that have necessitated us to take evasive measures to deal with the jellyfish infestation. One of the events we had a tiger shark caught in our intake structures, so we reduced power to release that from that. So we do get fish coming in and out of our facility, and that is being managed appropriately around that. And we don't have any other negative effects that we can say is a result of the operations of Kubo. Thank you.
Oyster, if this table was next. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Galinda. I'm a resident of Oyster today.
Just to make sense of you.
Oyster Bay's got a very small informal settlement, a township. Now, there's going to be a huge influx of people. They're getting from different cultures and more over the place. How is that going to affect, what are you going to do for our safety and security while the construction is taking place? The additional people that are going to come in and where they're going to go. Our township can't grow much bigger, there's not many space. We don't have a police station. If there is any problem, we do not have anybody we don't have the backup. So how is our safety going to be managed, and will the infrastructure and more people coming in? People do say yes, they've got going to do education and upscale. Unfortunately, you are going to do that, but you do not. Most of the people here are they're not literate. They can't read, they can't write, they can't use computers. So all these jobs you promise people and the upscaling, unfortunately it's not a reality. I don't think it's been a reality up to now. The Dupi place we're talking about, the corruption that happened, the cost where it ran way over budget and years and years and years, and the total incompetence of what was happening. How is it not going to happen here at Casement? Eskom is in chaos. What is going to happen? I mean, and this was all started still while Eskom was still in the clear, and now all of a sudden Eskom's gone. What is going to happen? Eskom's here, I'll discuss it with you later. The Dynafontein, is het goed gekeer en gaan het gebouw worden, of is het klaar gebouwd? Ik heb niet onthouden, nee? And for the road infrastructure, yes, we all get promised roads, but who's going to fund the roads? Because the transport, there's no money in the transport, to do roads and upkeep of roads, and then it's all nice, we're going to have beautiful roads, but then it's going to keep up big potholes, the trucks aren't going to be driving, the more the trucks drive, the bigger the holes get. If there's a fatal spillage, who's going to be in charge of the cleanup? Who's going to be responsible for it? The incidents are covered, health, property and disaster management plan. You said disaster management plan, and you said there's liability. Now, if something happens, do we have to prove that something happened, or what kind of proofs do we have to jump to get our report in if anything happens? Desalination impact assessment, is that going to be done separately, or is it all going to be lumped into one big assessment? Same for the water waste, is that also going to be a different impact assessment? And then the water cooling impact assessment also affects the fishes, they're going to be cool, and that it's going to be hot, and then so, as the gentleman said. The fishing impact, who will be doing that? It doesn't help this gentleman ask questions. questions, and in the interpretation, some of them weren't answered correctly or addressed. So the person who's going to be doing the assessment, who is that person? Are they going to actually be working together with the people who are actually going to be affected in the environment? Are they independent? Yes, and then transport of waste, we know how people drive in South Africa. The nuclear regulators, we say they're international. Unfortunately, I live in the reality of South Africa and people slack and things don't get checked. Who's going to regulate the regulators? And then who's going to be the watchdog on how things are managed here?
Thank you very much.
That's a whole suite of issues. Would you like to comment on the suite of impact assessment studies and questions around that?
Yeah. So, in terms of the impacts, like the desalination outflows, the outflow from the cooling water release or outflow back into the ocean, those are for us critical aspects for assessment. I think it was mentioned earlier also the brine disposal as part of the desalination and how that will be discharged back into the ocean. So there's options there as well. At this stage, most favoured option in that case, but again, the impacts will need to be assessed to verify that it's effective. It will be blended in back with the water that from the cooling discharged water, which is a much higher volume of water, so that it dilutes prior to going back into the ocean. So at this stage, we cannot tell you this is going to be the significance of those. In terms of the specialists and where necessary, the specialists will also need to consult where relevant with the relevant industries or the relevant users. Like the social impact assessment will be involved in various levels of engagement with various people, like with the marine, etc. They will need to understand what the industry looks like. So there's a full integration. It's not every study looks at a specific discipline, but there's a lot of integration between the various disciplines. And the specialists also have insight into each other's reports as well. So those are being done in the ERA phase. And I'm sorry at this stage that we aren't scoping. I can't give you answers and say this is going to be the extent, but in the ERA phase it will be discussed. The level of mitigation and how they came to those conclusions will also be discussed. So,
So the specialists doing the marine ecology assessment, their name is Anchor Environmental. What do they do? I don't think they are a new specialist. They're not the same specialists as the previous assessment. We believe they are some of the best in business to do marine ecology. And they already have reviewed previous studies and done some of their own, and will be doing some of their own. They'll be doing their own modeling, etc. as well. So they are very good. They are independent from Eskom, and they have signed the Declaration of Independence as well. Anchor Environment. Anchor, like a boat anchor. Anchor Environment.
Before we got at this question, baseline of what it was before the group started and what it is like now. I know there's some chart or something but if somebody could just add that to the question, whatever.
Okay. We'll add it to the, they'll have to ask that. All right, thank you so much.
The assessment as we've been speaking about trucking industry. Who qualifies that person And who qualifies the company that has been asked to do the assessment if they themselves haven't even consulted with the chocolate industry in totality? How can you then go ahead and think that you know better than the actual relevant people that are actually catching the fish, that know the circumstances of the water, that know the weather, that knows the wind, knows the direction of the waves? There is currents that run here, that changes the dynamics under the sea that we have got no understanding of. So we that catch the chocker are still trying to figure out how to get it right. How does that person that you say is more than qualified, okay, can see things better than we can see it? Please explain it.
So you're quite right. They don't see it better than you because you are doing it every day. So what the first thing, we need to take these concerns that you have of all the marine ecology, we give it to them. They have a look at it, and they will also, I would absolutely be sure that they would also be in touch with people such as yourselves. And if you are open to them giving you a form, then we will give them your number. Yeah. Perfect. So give us your number before you leave, and we will give it to the specialists themselves.
Can I just confirm it? Are you CRC? Are you from CRC? Okay, so are you and the squid gentleman?
Squid industry, similar.
You both in that industry?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I think for the focus group, we will then consider that both, inclusion of both. Yeah, thank you. Right, so the table there at the back, I think we can just keep it short and please do not repeat the questions that have been asked.
Thanks, Chairperson.
So security is part of the social impact assessment.
Part of the security section, because of the distances between the different sections of human flows and transit, we are currently sitting with a situation.
And now quiet, please.
Sorry? There is a difference. In Humansdorp there's a police station and one in St. Francis. If we have currently a situation here, we get redirected sometimes from one to the other. So it also backs that we do not have access to policing. So if something like this ever does happen here, there will have to be the police forum must be also instituted into this section so that we can have protection whilst the development is here and the extreme amount of people that's going to be accessing this town. There is also going to be a multitude amount of crime that's going to escalate in this area. Currently we are under direction. I don't know the full stats, but we are not that bad currently. But if the development does happen here, even the residents that's in the location or any area around here, I can guarantee you there's going to be an escalation of violence, and that is going to be an escalation of alcohol abuse. That is already been a factor with the wind farm people that moved in here, and the same with the people that build here. So please take note of that.
Thank you, and I think we know also that the cumulative impacts need to be considered as part of that. Thank you.
Thanks, Chairperson. At last, I got the opportunity to raise my question and then do my comments. I've got a question that is a main concern to the whole of our community. That will there be evacuation plan? Whatever happens, is the plan in place that is made up
just want to say the presentation was clear and precise. Seeing that Quebec has been operating for over 40 years with no incidents, we therefore support the nuclear power replacement. We believe that our communities will get development and better opportunities for our future. Hashtag we support the replacement. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Can I just ask Sadiqa to respond to the evacuation plan question?
Thank you, Tony. It's a very important question in terms of the evacuation plan. In terms of what is required from the national nuclear regulator when we do construct the power plant, before we go operational, then that emergency plan will need to have been demonstrated to be effective to the regulator, and that is part of the license conditions of the nuclear plant. So we will have to demonstrate that we are able to execute the plan, and the plan should include the evacuation of all interested and affected persons in the area of concern to be safely evacuated. It may require bringing in buses. Eskom will have to have certain contractual arrangements in place with busing companies to provide that facilities and those logistics, as well as identified areas where people will be evacuated to and treated or medically treated as the need may be and as need arises. All of those will be part of the disaster management plan that needs to be developed to manage that eventuality. So that will be a requirement on Eskom to be able to execute that in consultation and working with the local municipality and provincial municipality on the disaster management criteria that will be applicable on that. It includes the construction of a disaster management facility or emergency plan facility and other ancillaries that will be required to make that executable. So we do need to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we have the mic at that table, and then we'll do these two tables. Thank you. Thank you for your patience. I really appreciate that.
Okay, good evening. We have a couple of questions. There's just one that I do want to repeat that was on the list.
Just your name, sir, please.
Driekus Schreiler, also a resident in Oyster Bay. So we're at the limit of our access roads. Our gravel roads are really can actually not handle more traffic. So we already have an issue with the roads. It's not a small issue. I know it's been raised, but I don't think the intensity of the road issue has been emphasized enough. So please, that is a serious issue to be considered. There was a question on property values, the valuation of properties. There is a stigma effect, so I think it's fair to mitigate that. There might be some marketing or whatever that needs to be done to mitigate the stigma that's involved with that. So we'd like to understand what will be done to ensure that property values are maintained. We did have a discussion about labour, water and transmission, so I'm not going to talk about that. And the other thing is what technology is going to be used. I know you say it hasn't been decided, but let me just tell there's a certain president that we had that had some affiliations with Russia. So if there's a Russian nuclear station that's going to be built, I'm probably going to toy myself, so that's not acceptable. I know that there are some discussions about pebble bed, which originated in Germany, and I'm very much in favour. I know it's more secure. So the technology that's going to be decided is also going to swing sentiment, and I think there are some safer technologies. The technology in Quebec is actually very old technology. It's not very safe. It's got a lot of waste. So we would like to see some improvements and some communication on specifically if there's going to be a better technology that's less dangerous and it's got less waste or less dangerous waste. And then, funny enough, we've heard a lot about how many people's going to come in, but we would like to understand the timeline of build and how much. And I understand the pebble bed is going to be different, and there are different technologies. But how long just like to understand that. The rest of the questions was asked.
I think there's some there for you. In terms of the technology, in terms of the ramp-up and the roads, yeah.
Okay, I'll start with that. On the road, in terms of the road infrastructure, I think we all agree that the current infrastructure coming in on this side of the property is not adequate to facilitate the plant. So the project will be under obligation to make sure there's an appropriate road constructed to meet the needs of the plant, especially for the haulage of the large components that would require to come to site. So there will be an appropriate road and route designed and built to meet those requirements. And our intention it would be a properly thought road or properly surfaced road to meet those requirements. And we will be working with the road agencies to make sure that is done. So we do see that as part of the infrastructure development that's required in the area to be upgraded to meet the needs of the project. And that's what we are intending to do. Quickly on the property values, current experience, the property values within the 16-kilometer radius around Kubu is one of the most affluent areas in the country. In terms of the property that's there, the property values are quite high. Because of the limitations around that, a lot of people actually want the exclusion zone to be extended so that their property value could be better improved. So our experience around just the property prices in those areas are different from the rhetoric that's currently out that the property values will decline. I think the opposite will actually happen because those are actually quite sought after communities for people who are wanting to live in around that. Construction, we're hoping that construction will start around about 2030, and the current IRP, Integrated Resource Plan, is asking that the 5,200 megawatts be deployed by 2039. That's all the reactors. It will be on both the Dana-Fontein site, and if this site is approved, we will be constructing here. We will be constructing multiple reactors on the two sites, so it's not everything here. We are looking at splitting the resources so that construction will be at Tayston as well as at Dana-Fontein, and we will start with Dana-Fontein. That's the current plan that's there. It is more advanced. We've got an environmental approval. It is currently under legal review, and we have started the other application processes to support that. We also do require the nuclear installation site license, and that will involve another public participation process to follow on after that in terms of the NNR process or the National Nuclear Regulators process. And after that, there will be another process with the regulator once we've chosen the reactor. We have not, as I said, decided on a specific reactor vendor at this moment in time. We have specified the important safety criteria in the power plant parameter envelope for what we would like the reactor to look like. And it's bound to be a pressurized water reactor design, the latest technology that's available. That's why we're looking for passive safety systems, increased redundancy, lower core damage frequency, and the defense in debt principles that I've spoken about earlier. And there are currently 6 or 7 companies in the world that can provide this technology. It does include the Russians. They have a PWR design. So do the Chinese, so does the South Koreans, so does the Americans, and so does the French. So there's quite a lot of options currently available that can meet our requirements around that, and we will let the market engagement that we go through determine what would be the best deal for us as a country to build on. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to check on the time. We still have 5 tables that have questions. Is that okay for us to carry on with those 5 tables questions? Yes, thank you very much.
Baie dankie, my naam is Walter Kurten en ek woon op Oesterbaai waar vir 12 jaar gewoond en op eiendom hier so vir 22 jaar. Baie van die vrae wat ons het is reeds gevra, maar kyk, na die tyd sou die aansoek goedgekeur word. gaan WSP meer betaal. So is daar 'n bonusding vir julle ingebou. Ek wonder maar net. Dan beïnvloed die feit dat Eskom die grond by tuispunt besit enigstens watter omstandighede het verander nadat die vorige aansoek deur die hof verwerp is. Hoe kom dan nou hierdie hernieuwde aansoek? Ek verneem dat daar iewers in julle 3000 bladsye plus dokument vermeld word dat geraasbesoedeling 'n groot probleem mag wees. En dit gaan die klompie 100 inwoners wat hier woon, ek praat van Oyster en Omsmalwet erg verondrie. En watter maatreëls gaan in die verband getref word. Ek was hierso toe die toetsgate gebore is destyds op die tuispunt terrein. En ek het die vibrasies in my huis gehoor en dit was ek is besig om te herstel van die operasie. Dit was uiters ongemaklik en ek mag my verbeel my dink vir die vibrasies tot onder die huis. Ja, ek het baie gepraat oor die instrument van duisende werkers, maar ek wil net noem dat gesondheidsdienste in die Oos-Kaap is van so 'n aard dat jy dit eintlik nie kan gesondheidsdienste noem nie, dit is vandag weer in die media getrek. So ek weet nie wat van Eskom doen daarvan nie. Oyster is landwyd bekend vir sy afgesonderheid en veiligheid en dit gaan nou hier ook maar weer oor die misdaad. Maar dit is eintlik die verkoop een van die groot verkoopdinge wat gebeur in die dorp is die veiligheid. Min van ons eiendomme is omhei, so die instrument van mense gaan vir ons inwoners ook definitief ekstra koste meebring om veiligheidsmaatreëls te tref. Ek dink net, ons is meer bekommerd oor die konstruksietyd, want ek dink in daai tyd gaan die eiendomspryse val en daarna sal dit by welkomstraat optel word. Maar definitief nie tydens die konstruksietyd van 10 jaar nie. En dis seker die omtrent tydperk dat ek oor het om te leef, dalk 'n bietjie meer. Ek wil net noem dat die moontlikheid van grondwaterbesoedeling is nie ergens aangespreek nie. Ek is bekommerd daaroor, want die hele Oysterbaai en Omsmalwet is afhanklik van grondwater deur boorgate en fonteine. En is daar 'n risiko daar? Ek dink daar moet wees en hoe gaan dit aangespreek word. Niemand het gepraat met die Duineveld. Dis eintlik 'n bewaringsgebied en ons is baie bekommerd dat dit so beskadig gaan word dat dit nooit weer reggestel word. Dit is 'n unieke bioom tot 'n baie groot mate in ons land en watter maatreëls word daar getref om die skade daar te veroorsaak. Baie is aangespreek. Ek wil net hê die mense wat ten gunste is moet besef dat tydens die konstruksietyd gaan dit vir almal in hierdie omgewing word. Juis omdat ons so naby is, dit gaan groot uitdagings. Klaar.
Kan sy net gou op objeksie wat sy net wil voorlees.
I object to the Eskom nuclear development. There are viable, less harmful alternatives. Modern wind turbines are quieter and more efficient, and both wind and large-scale solar farms have proven to coexist successfully with livestock and farming and rural economies. Government investment should rather support solar adoption and gas appliances for low-income households and students. This would stimulate economic growth, create jobs, and provide more immediate energy relief. If Tastement is approved, I will pursue financial compensation through the High Court and, if necessary, the Constitutional Court. The restrictions imposed by Eskom and NEXA will negatively impact my business, limit my professional activities, and infringe on my property rights and and freedom of self-determination. Thank you.
So I'll quickly answer your question on the approval. So WCP is appointed by Eskom, yes. We are the Eskom, in terms of Regulation 12, the EIA regulations, has to appoint an independent EAP at their own cost. So they have to bear the cost of the impact assessment. Our final invoice is issued on submission of the final EIA report to the DFFE. It is way before the decision, so our fee essentially is not based on the end result, and we get paid regardless of it. Okay? You have to ask a question, and there you go. Why new EIA needs to be done. So basically, because each process is different, things are slightly different in this EIA. The number of megawatts is more. It was 4,000 previously, it's now 5,200. So new triggers. In this case, we have a plant parameter envelope. It's not a very specific thing. So there's a lot of changes. And in this particular case, and there's already, the previous EIA decision was already made. So that's why this is a new one, and unfortunately, yes, we do have to go through the process again. Okay. Right.
Kan ek maar Afrikaans praat? As ek kyk na die paar van die ander die verhaal besoek, gesondheidsdienste en dan ook grondwater. Dit was een van die ander wat genoem is. So die grondwater so. Goed, so geraas, daar is op hierdie staan wat die spesialiste wel gedoen het. Op al die geraas, grondwater, op die terrein is daar baie grondwatermonteringsdata beskikbaar. So daar's heel paar jaar se geskiedenis ook rondom wat die kwaliteit is. Selfs met geraas, daar is basislyn assesserings al gedoen. So hulle verstaan op hierdie stadium presies hoe lyk die stand van sake in terme van die kwaliteit in die geraasvlak. So in die volgende fase, gebaseer op die aktiwiteite en ook die fasering van die aktiwiteite, sal dan impakbepalings gedoen word wat gemodelleer word om te bepaal wat is die omvang en die uitreik, die extent van daai impak. Op hierdie stadium raak dit grondwater en ek verstaan bekommernis want ek weet Oesterbaai is jy is baie beperkte grondwater en jy maak ook staan op grondwater betrekking vir julle eie gebruik. Die terrein self se grondwaterbron is ook relatief beperk. So daarom is die ontsoutingsaanleg belangrike faset vir watergebruik. En dan net in die konstruksiefase op hierdie stadium, weet ek die spesialiste het genoem, maar dit is nog nie verseker dat dit gaan gebeur in terme van wat die volume is nie, maar hulle gaan dalk van grondwater gebruik maak tydens konstruksie vir sekere van die aktiwiteite. Maar natuurlik word dit ook gebaseer, hulle gaan bepaal wat die maksimum wat hulle kan gebruik om nie op die einde van die dag die aquifer impakteer op die aquifer. So daai studies word gedoen. So grondwater is aangespreek op hierdie stadium in die omvangsverslag. Daar word verwys wat ek wel raak gelees het daar, wat ek ook na gekyk het, is dat hulle sê hulle verwag op grond van die mate van gebruike verwag hulle nie dat groot skaalse impak sal wees. Duineveld, baie belangrik. Weer eens, daar is spesialiste wat spesifiek hierna kyk, en natuurlik op die ouend van die dag, en dit kom by plaas, en wat onthou, die fisiese footprint in Afrikaans, en ek het net as 'n mooi vertaling gedoen. Voetspoor, baie dankie. So die fisiese voetspoor in die uitleg So wat die spesialiste doen, en dit gaan geld vir al die studies wat gedoen word, nie net Duinveld nie, dit is ook die vlei lande, dit gaan rondom die verskillende ander fauna en flora spesies etc. is hulle word dan op terrein besoek. So hulle bepaal hoe die sensitiwiteit en dan beplasing van die verskillende infrastruktuur gaan hulle bepaal die beste opsies om die minste impak te hê. So, onthou dit is ook 'n relatief klein oppervlak, hektaargewys oppervlak wat die totale aanleg gaan bestaan, maar dan is daar natuurlik ook paaie. En dit is eintlik een van die areas wat die ouens op hierdie stadium miskien al die meeste dink werk gaan is hoe hulle toegangspaaie gaan hê dat die impak op die soos byvoorbeeld die Duinveld die laaste gaan wees. Maar ek kan nie op hierdie stadium vir die skaal van impak gaan wees nie. En hoe dit vir my gaan word, dit word nog alles op hierdie stadium ondersoek. Okay, so to break on this. And we note your objection. I think again this is minuted, and it will be provided. The full content thereof will be provided for in the comments and response.
Just one thing. Sorry. Ripple risk. Good day. Sorry. Have you guys addressed Ripple's risk at all? Any of the residents there?
The people who had property there was sitting here.
They're from Rebels Risk.
Waar is die area? Hoe ver is
Net dis kant Duinefontein van ons stad. Daar's een gedeelte wat nie verkoop is nie. Van die Eskom net, 'n klein gedeelte ek dink dis.
Okay. You're aware. Word genoot. Yeah, we acknowledge that now.
There needs to be an environmental specialist that lives there. So there's a professor that lives there. Have you guys contacted him at all? People don't understand.
Okay, because Ben's
Sorry. Will you make sure that we have his number? We'll double check because he's probably on the database. And then we can call you and he will double check, but I can almost guarantee you he's already on the database, yes.
Goed, laat ons afgaan mense, dit is kan goed saam ek dink, ek weet nie die vraag wel geantwoord, die groot ding wat ek wel opgemerk het, was dat uitkomst was, dat hulle gesê, na aanleiding van die hoofstuk 11 van die concept ontvangstbepalings, het hulle, dis 25 gekend, wat my die meeste bekommerd is, die telnommers, maar die gewigte daarin slaat, so, vir my is het baie belangrik om wel te kyk om te sien wat er is meer belangrik. En jy kan een teken sê maar die impak wat jy op die hele projek is miskien 2%, terwyl die een wat 30% impak het, hy het het tik by Oyster. Ek meen, dit kan heeltemal anders te wees. Ek dink dit is belangrik om dit te onthou. Net in terme van die paaie, ons moet onthou, die paaie is vir ons eintlik maar 'n sekuriteitsding en weer daar snel weer gebou word. Jy kan nie 'n kernkragsentrale bou sonder snelheid. Dan die vraag is ook wat gekom in hier is dat hoekom nie die Weskus nie? Die Wallikus. Jy kyk nou, ons praat van die omgewing volgens ek sien kan aanvaarbaar wees in terme van Elizabeth, Londen en sovoort. En jy wil nie nog 'n kragsentrale in die Weste sit nie, so ek dink dit maak baie moeilik. Hulle het nie hier nie, maar dit gaan nie pas in die omgewing nie. Maar so mens moet ook logika hê, en maar dit nou kom ons dan nie twee op die lys, kom ons dan nie aan afdruk. Dankie.
Baie dankie.
Ja, ek dink die aspek, ek net 'n kommentaar op die gewig. Dit is definitief ek neem in kennis daarvan en dit is ook iets wat ons oral gedink het. En dis baie moeilik baie keer rondom sekere aspekte is miskien meer belangrik of ondersoekareas is meer belangrik as ander, maar dan dis ook baie subjektief. Dis die ander probleem. Want vir een ou is die fauna byvoorbeeld baie belangrik terwyl vir 'n ander ou is die vlei lande. So ons probeer so ver as moontlik daai goed alles in ag neem. Deirdre, yeah, you answered the question around the West Coast.
Wild
Oh, sorry, Wild Coast.
West Coast Wild Coast. Yeah, I'm planning on moving there, so. No, I'm joking, sorry. A bit of lightheartedness at the end of a very long evening. And I think we've spoken about it a lot, and it is in the environmental scoping report that we carried out detailed assessments, which we call NSIP, which is the National Siting Investigation Program. We investigated most of the coast. There were a couple of areas that were excluded because at the time there was a Ciskei and Transkei that were excluded. But the sites that were chosen at that time in the 1980s, which were the 3 sites that we talk a lot about, plus 2 sites right up on the west coast, were identified. We then went through the process of re-evaluating the sites, in-depth assessments from a seismic point of view, from a geotechnical point of view. So there's a lot of money and time being spent on the sites that were selected at that time, and hence we are now focusing on those sites to develop them as nuclear sites. So yes, it's a long process. They were selected a long time ago. There were different circumstances, but there has been a lot of money spent on the 3 sites that we selected them, including the purchase of the facilities. The process was very thorough. If you look at the scoping report, you'll see the depth of information that we went through. Now, obviously, the socioeconomic things have changed, but many of the physical components in those studies remain the same. So that is the reason. May not 100% support it, but that's the reason. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. Philippe Station, resident and community developer. So this is a statement. The infrastructure of Koga is definitely not enough in all aspects. Water, sanitation, hospitals, schools, all infrastructure is not enough and sufficient to handle the income of construction workers. Then ecotourism is very important for this area, for the development of the area, and I also propose that there's a focus group for tourism in general. Speaking of the surfing community and the whole ecotourism development. Then also we would like to know how this will affect our sense of place and our coastal identity as we know it. It will definitely affect it negatively. A lot of our questions were answered, thank you. Then what will happen to our level 1 heritage site of the Khoisan fish brand and other things? Then also, has any other studies been done, like in USA, where coal plants have been repurposed with small modular reactors with not a lot of effort? But there's a lot of success there. And then I think our last point here. Oh yes, it's just a question. The 14 kilometers zone of no development for property owners. Why is that? We just need an answer on that. And then just the last point, we support development and economic development, but with our own local assets.
Thank you so much for those questions. I'm going to keep the 14-kilometer to Stika. Just remind me the others. I think in terms of the heritage sites, that I can definitely talk about. That heritage site, we know about it, we know about the processes that are involved, and there's also discussions with the relevant First Nations groups about being able to actually preserve and conserve their areas, their fish traps, their access to them, etc. So it is definitely not going to be destroyed. And it's actually going to potentially be a benefit that the site will be better conserved than it may be if the facility wasn't there. That is part of the heritage assessment already. But there is going to be discussions with the First Nations to ensure that there's agreements in place that they have access to those areas and that those areas are conserved sufficiently for them. So that's on the one side. In terms of sense of place and all of those, we do have a visual assessment going on. So they will be looking at that. And in terms of tourism, we have the scoping report has identified the need for a specific tourism impact assessment, which will be part of the next phase. Okay.
There's also a request for a focus group.
And so we've noted that down. That'll be great. And then Deirdre?
There you go. I'll just cover the question on SMRs and the coal plant. So we're actually doing a lot on the coal-fired plant which shut down. So we're touching down 8 gigawatts of coal in 2030. Actually, in March 2030, so not even at the end of the 2030. And hence we need to make sure that we have security of supply. But what we're doing with the coal plants is one of them is a strategic environmental assessment which we initiated in December on placing SMRs specifically at the coal plants. We haven't limited it to the plants that are closing down because SMRs will take a little bit longer to deploy. So we've actually done it at all of our coal-fired plants and investigating where there's space to actually put an SMR where there's constraints. Is there undermining? Is the seismicity fine? So all of that will be done in the strategic environmental assessment. And then the sites that come out of there will then be, we'll do an EIA on them. But we're also looking at other technologies at the coal-fired plant. So we're looking at low sulfur technologies, coal technologies, as long as we fit in with the climate change restrictions. And we're also looking at long duration energy storage, PV, a little bit of wind, that we can actually just keep that economy in Mpumalanga going. Because when the coal plant shuts down, the economy shuts down. You know, the Mpumalanga area relies a lot on the coal-fired plant. So there's a lot of concern about the job losses and complete failure of the economy in Mpumalanga. So we're doing quite a lot to just transition in a just way and mitigate as far as we can. But SMRs are definitely part of the plan.
So in terms of the 60-kilometer restriction that would be imposed around the clock, that's dependent around the regulations that the national nuclear regulator would put in place to restrict development. It will be a function around the evacuation of plant and the capability to evacuate from that. And those restrictions would be determined in consultation with the regulator and the local municipality around the specific restrictions based on the viability of the emergency plan to be executed. From a plant design point of view, we're looking at minimizing that radius, but the actual restriction around population distribution around the site would be imposed upon us by the national nuclear regulator for that. Well, it wouldn't affect you currently on that, but what it does do, it does restrict massive complex developments like hotels or people going into multi-story high buildings in that instance as an example. So that is what is looked at in terms of the development. It doesn't restrict a family house from being constructed and built around that. If it's existing, it shouldn't be impacted. Yeah, you can. I wouldn't see why that wouldn't happen. It would depend on the local municipal bylaws and what is required around that, and if the regulator imposes any restrictions around that development at some point in the future. The current restrictions, it's around, it's very dense in Quebec. So to say the use Quebec as an example, the population around Quebec is quite dense. There is a discussion currently happening with the Oyster development company and the city that plans to expand the metropole from the city to Boston land, as if you know another area, so 40-kilometer land that's being done there. And the multi-use development areas are being discussed around how that would impact around that. The current enclave of development within the 16-kilometer radius is one of those points. So a lot of individuals, a lot of families wants to be part of the 16-kilometer radius because they don't want this massive development around the complex, which they feel will impact their property prices and their sense of the place, because they prefer the smaller community spirit that they have with the current restrictions that's in place. So we have people asking us to expand the 16-kilometer radius. It's actually quite fun because there's a street that does the physical separation. On the left-hand side of the street, we want to be part of it, and the rules doesn't allow that because they're scared that all these other developments will impact their property prices by pushing it down. So it's a different dynamic that's currently at play of what we see.
I don't think we have just two questions that we have left, and the one is more close to home. With tourism, fishing and the walking trails. Working for Eskom for 3 years, I know the power station is a national key point, so obviously there's electric fencing around everything, pump stations around the power station, etc. Where will that area no-go zone be? So where will we be stopped? Where fishermen will not be allowed to go down the route towards Tasman or in your area? Where exactly will that area be? And the last question, I think, is how Eskom is going to fund this whole project and how it will affect us in future. Because if you look at the revenues, about 350 billion a year, and it's the first time you've made profit was this year. And with the repayments, I'm not sure how you guys are going to repay, so I would like to know how you're going to do it, or is it going to be increased by no slightly?
Okay. When the national key point gets declared, that's when we will have the large security fence around the facility, and it will be clearly demarcated around what the areas are where you will not be allowed to travel. And that's really around the security of the facility, the protection of the facility as a national key point, which is what we would be required to do. The actual footprint of the facility will determine those boundary fence conditions where they will be placed. I can't say that now because we don't have the reactive technology and the footprint finalized, because the two are dependent on that. But that fence would go up at an appropriate time during construction, and it's normally before the nuclear fuel arrives on site. That's when we would declare the national key point and protect the facility from that perspective. Other than that, it will be the normal security arrangements for any construction site to monitor ingress ingress and egress from to the site and the surrounding area to protect the natural assets or the like. We do not envisage major disturbance around the beach, so those should still be accessible to the general public in the current layout and thinking that we have, depending on the final solution that comes through. In terms of funding for the project, we have not finalized the funding model. We're still busy evaluating the options as Eskom. We will be looking at the potential use of a public-private partnership arrangement. We are in discussions with National Treasury on how that will look, and we are looking at onboarding a partner to support us in that facility, or in the process of the project to do that. Currently looking at vendor finance options as viable options, and that will all be part and parcel of the impact assessment, and we will conclude on that.
Right. Is there a follow-up?
So just to
So that will be the end of it. So we will not be able to walk from Oyster Bay to Cape Town. We stop at the express. Now at the express, because this road, you can see. And Wassenaar, we stop at Wassenaar. From Wassenaar to the express. They go through the fence all the way, for example, by
Like I said, that depends on where the footprint is demarcated and what the final design solution is that we are progressing through for that. If we're using the underwater seawater parks, which was the concern that the other gentleman raised, then the plant will be 200 meters away from the beach, and that beach will be free access because the fence will be located somewhere else, and the cooling and outflow structures will go underneath the ground around that. That's part of the assessment that's ongoing. It's really an assessment around underwater parking or the cooling intake and outflow, or the conventional cooling that we have at Kuba, which is an intake basin and an exit basin. And those are two different options for different results that we need to monitor appropriately.
Right, thank you very much. Is that a last burning question that you have? I'm going to just give you the mic just a minute.
There was mention of the Medupi power plant. What was the time overrun on that plant? Bearing in mind, the question is there a chance of an overrun on this plant? It's way bigger. Was it something like 10 years between the start of the build and when it was supposed to be finished and the overrun? Has any power plant ever been built according to time schedules?
So our Siri wind farm was built in time. The Siri wind farm, which is a 100 megawatt wind farm. Okay. So you asked if any power station has been built on time. Medupi and Kusile, I would have to go back and look at the dates to be exact on how long it took. But what I can tell you is that there was no upfront. You know, when you're doing a huge infrastructure project, you need to do front-end loading of the project. You need to plan properly, you need to do the tenders properly, you need to prepare the site properly. There was a very late decision made to actually start developing those coal plants. We were already short of power when we made a decision that we had to start building. And so there was very limited front-end loading of the infrastructure, because we've gone back and looked, well, what did we do wrong? And why did it go wrong? And there was very little upfront loading. We did the environmental impact assessment. It took us a year. It got approved. 2 months later, we were on site turning soil. And we ran into all sorts. The first thing we ran into was we hadn't done the geotechnical properly, and places where we wanted to do foundations, we had to do significantly more Medupi and Kusile was really that there wasn't upfront preparation. And what I can tell you is this site and the David-Fontaine site have had a lot of assessment. We know what we're dealing with on these sites compared to what we knew when we started Medupi and Kusile. But the 2 stations are complete. All 6 units on each of the sites is operating, and they are actually our best, except for Kuberg, our best performing coal plant. So what I'll do is, I don't have the exact details right now, but I can tell you that we built open cycle gas turbines in record time. So I will give those timelines to you, and we built at Mossel Bay, and we built in